In the Loop podcast, a podcast that is inspired by the Western culture and the rodeo industry. I am your host, Jordan Joe Hullabaugh, professional rodeo athlete, business owner, married to my best friend, full-time cowgirl, and I am blessed to get to do what I love to do each and every day. My goal is to promote this industry and specifically the sport of breakaway roping. On In the Loop podcast, we are bringing you behind-the-scenes stories of what real life looks like every day, from cowgirls, cowboys, industry producers, leaders, trailblazers, you name it, we talk about it. We are sharing stories of this Western culture and the lifestyle that they live daily. Join me as we share these stories of the amazing triumphs, trials, and victories, defining moments that we all have along this journey of the amazing way of life that we live. You are officially in the loop. Let's get to it. Okay, guys, so today I am here with the one and only Cheyenne Wimberly. I feel honored to have a professional barrel racer on my show. I'm really trying to branch out and learn more about barrel racing, which Cheyenne and I were just discussing something, so she's really going to have to teach me the ropes because I'm like, do we call them the barn name? Do we call them their registered name? Like, how do we go about talking about all things barrel racing horses? But Cheyenne, thanks for coming to the show today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
So you have lots of irons in the fire. You are a professional realtor. You are a professional barrel racer. I was going to say breakaway roper. You probably did breakaway rope at some point in time. Made it to the NFR 5 times. You were an AJRA world champion, might I add. Yes, I did some digging. That's a pretty cool title. And you are the 2023 WRWC Barrel Racing Event Champion. I'm sure I'm missing several different titles and accolades in there. What is it like in a day of Cheyenne?
It's pretty hectic. Most days, we're trying to get some colts going too. So most days we try to ride some horses, and then like you said, I sell real estate and also horse insurance. So I tried to find jobs that were going to just add to the lifestyle that I already had with people that I already mentored or was friends with or just acquainted with. So it's a busy day, but we're used to that lifestyle when we rodeo, right?
We thrive in the chaos. Yeah. So you and your mom, I see you guys everywhere together. Talk a little bit about that relationship with her and just how involved she is in everything that you do.
Yeah, so my mom has always gone with me. So I'm the only child. And we lived in El Paso when I grew up. So it wasn't like it was a very centrally located area. And I rodeoed at a really young age. I actually filled my permit when I was 11. And at that time, there wasn't an age limit on barrel racing in professional. So for me to travel, I needed a driver. And she's been my driver forever. So, but we lived in El Paso. My parents were in the racehorse business. They also roped and ran barrels. And really without them, I wouldn't have been anywhere, because in a place that's that desolate, you don't really have a lot of outside interaction with other people like you do here in the central location of Texas. And so my mom, yeah, she's great. She lives now close to me. My dad passed away about 7 years ago. So I moved her pretty close to me. She helps me on a daily basis. She rides the seasoned rodeo horses, and she's really good at maintenance on a horse. So like I say, I don't let her sit on the couch a whole lot, so I just kind of keep her active.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen either one of you ever sitting at very long of a time. You are always going and blowing and thriving. Talk a little bit about just what it's like at 11 years old filling your permit. I mean, what was going through your mind at that time? Were you just having fun barrel racing, or, I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
No, I come from a family that was very particular about competition. My dad was instilled, and I think most people that come from families like that have somebody in their family, a mom or dad, that drives them to that point. And we had horses, as I said, I had won quite a bit as I was growing up, from the junior ranks to the amateur ranks. And at that time, I had a horse that was an amazing horse. He had won all the amateurs that we had been to in the state of really New Mexico and Texas. So there really wasn't big barrel races like there are now, and there wasn't big junior events that paid a lot of money. So for the only way to get that horse to where he needed to be was in the professional ranks. At that time, it wasn't like there was a lot, but at that time, Charmaine was going and she was a world's champion. And we had like Rachel Melamaki and Molly Powell and Angie Metter. So there was certain kids going at that time because the horsepower that they had, you didn't have anywhere else to go with them. So sure, we were not, there wasn't like there was a lot, and rodeo was a little bit different back then. I want to say maybe it was a little more family oriented than it is now, because there wasn't the mass amount of events, and they were a little bit more spread out in individual places. So, you know, my mom loaded me up with that horse, and he was really spectacular, and that was his only place to really go. So at that time, it was just a place to go and a place to be, and that was the best place.
Yeah. So you made the finals 2 years back to back, and then I think everybody, if you look at the stats, I don't know that they knew you were 11, because it's like, oh, hey, 20 years later, you come back and you make the NFR 3 times again. And so how, in that time, you have your job, you are selling real estate, you are riding barrel horses. I mean, you're still doing all these things. What gave you the desire to go back and make the NFR again?
Well, the first 2 times that I made it, I had a horse that was, I had purchased from some people in West Texas, and I was in college. And we pretty much bought him sight unseen. We knew what he was. We knew that if you could buy him, you better buy him. My dad drove down there, paid him cash, and we bought him. And today you wouldn't be paying cash, right? So, he really, it was kind of one of those things. It's like, here he is, and you better know how to ride him. And he was amazing. He had won pretty much every amateur rodeo there was in the state of Texas. He was just a West Texas horse that everybody knew who he was. And I was in college, and I went twice while I was in college. And then he wasn't the soundest horse when we bought him. So we were lucky to get the 2 years out of him that we did. And then I finished my degree. I started in a career in the insurance business, and really just life kind of happened. I still rode horses. I had some young horses, and I just didn't have the horses of that capability.
Right.
They're not on every street corner, you know. I mean, I wish they were, but in today's market, that's why they cost what they do, because they're just not. And then comes 20 years later, and I had a really nice mare sent to me that was, at that time, she was really a 2D type horse, but with a lot of potential. And I played around with her, and one summer I took her, and we thought, oh, we'll enter Cheyenne and go to those Utah rodeos, because it gets you out of the heat for about 2 weeks.
Yep.
And she succeeded pretty well. She won about 10,000 in those 2 weeks. And we were like, man, she might play with it a little bit. I need to probably make the circuit finals, because at that time, if you didn't get to your circuit finals, which at that time counted for the build-in rodeos, you weren't really going to get into those limited rodeos. So I was just strategic kind of planning at the time. Like, if I don't get into these, then I'm not going to get to the next step. And so I went to some rodeos that summer, made it to the circuit finals. And then another mare came in that I had played with, and I took her to one of the first WCRAs, and that was at Guthrie. Well, she won big. And I was like, you know what? Then we took her to Chicago, and she won Chicago. And I was like, this looks like she's going to be a pretty nice building horse. We better put her in the buildings. And at the same time, I was offered 2 other great, great horses from Robin Weaver. And so all those horses kind of came together at one time. And at that time, I didn't have I was still running barrels and riding horses. And I was like, we'll play with the rodeos. And we did, and we jumped in the truck behind the donut, and we made it again. So really, that's really how they all kind of came together.
Well, and I think it's so neat to learn, as a breakaway roper, we have several horses, and you're seeing more and more horsepower comes into play, but it is I don't even know the correct wording to say, if you don't have a horse that can run of that kind of power and capabilities and all of the things, it doesn't really matter what kind of skills and talents that you have. You're not going to make the cut. You have to have a horse of that accolade. And so that's so cool to see all of those horses came together for you. And even more neat that they all came together, and the WCRA was such a huge part of that. Starting out at Guthrie, following up with Chicago, it kind of, planted that foundation and that seed in you, and then you're like, hey, this is pretty neat. So that's why we're here today a little bit, to talk about the Women's Rodeo World Championship, the WCRAs, and all of the things that they've been. One thing that we all love and we all do is rodeo, right? Whether it's an amateur rodeo, pro rodeo, the WCRAs, anything that we can go to. But one of the things that has been near and dear to you is the Women's Rodeo World Championship, the WCRAs. So talk a little bit about, you've had the opportunity to travel thousands and thousands of miles to go to professional rodeos and make the NFR, beat the trail down, get behind the donut, just like you said. And then you've also had the opportunity to go to these bigger specialized events the WCRA WRWC has had and kick butt and take names. You walked away with a $60,000 check last year. So talk a little bit about what the difference is there, and kind of what motivates you to go to these WRWC events and the WCRAs.
Well, I had, going back to that mare that I said I took to Guthrie and then the WCRA, they, at that time, they were paying 50,000, to win the event. So that was a huge plus in the rodeo world, because you're not banking large amounts at a time at most of the time during the year. So of course, as time goes by, you're spending more and more money every day and every year, and the horses cost more and more. So I started looking into the I was at the WCRA, so I continued for the next couple of years. Now, some of my WCRA maybe phased a little bit, but I went to the women's rodeo over there at Fort Worth, and I love the concept of that. They had their rules set out from the beginning of the year. You knew what you were going to do. You knew when you were going to go. You could qualify at a jackpot. You could go over there. I could go 75 miles from the house at Run at Cowtown, and if you continue to advance, you were going to get paid. And they told you what you were going to get paid. Now, so I really like the fact, and I like that they were paying $60,000 no matter what to every woman that was over there that was winning an event. Well, I love that concept, and it was growing as it, I went, I think 3 years ago would have been maybe the first time. And, they maybe changed the format just a little bit, but numbers were growing and you knew what you were getting into. And I like that. I like the fact that there was rules, they followed them, and they knew where you were going.
Right.
The WCRA, sometimes those rodeos, the qualifying rodeo or to the next step didn't fit in locations where they were going to fit my style or where I was going to go. So I would nominate for the events that I felt like I could get to. Or I nominated at certain events that I was at that I maybe have multiple chances of trying to get more points at. But I feel like in the long run, I've definitely made out pretty good in both. I feel like I'm ahead of the ball game there. And so they've been a great association to add, because it's still a rodeo format, not a jackpot, and they're going to pay you in the long run.
Yeah. Well, and I was just sitting here going through the women's format for the 2024 here in Cowtown. We start Monday, May 13th and go all the way through Saturday, May 18th. But as a breakaway roper, I look at it more as the more runs we can get, the better, right? And the more calves we get to run, I'm all in for that. Whereas you guys sometimes look at it a little bit different, because you can only run one horse so many times and all of those things. So your format is a little bit different than the breakaway, than the team roping formats. You guys get 2 rounds, and then you advance to the AT&T championship round Saturday night. Also, I want to talk to you a little bit about the way they take people and advance to AT&T. So they take 2 out of each round, and then they also take 8 out of the average. Walk me through what it was like last year, 2023. I was privileged to get to watch you go through that process on Blue Duck, which we were just talking about. His barn name is Blue Duck. His original name is, I'm going to try to say this, Fast Fling and Dash. That's right. Breakaway roper just said it. So tell me, and I got to ask you in the back, I'm like, hey, what's this horse? I haven't seen him. He was beautiful, big, stout. And you're like, oh yeah, this is like his second rodeo. You said Waxahachie, Texas last year was his first rodeo ever. You go in there and you kick butt, you walk away with 60,000. So walk me through the process of how you made it to the Women's Rodeo World Finals in 2022. or 2023, excuse me, and then what that was like going through the format to advance and win the 60,000.
So I had to start, I hope I say this right because I might not get the format just correct, but I wasn't in, like, I think the top 10 maybe were placed in the performance. So I had to start maybe a go round before. Then I qualified into the next format. Now they paid those go rounds, so I wasn't running for nothing. So then we just kept going to their progressive run each time. And they were taking, a handful out of each time you ran, they were taking a couple or several, depending on how many were running that day. So I just kept progressing. And what it was that, the first time that you run, you're out running, say you're out running 20, because there's not like big numbers. They did have a jackpot like the day before that you could qualify from. So if you hadn't qualified into your top 20 of standings of points, you could run at a jackpot that was held in the same arena, and they took a couple from there to the next day. Well, I was in say the top 20. And I ran the first round, and he really was succeeding. Every time he ran, he was just getting a little bit faster. And the good thing about him, he never was cheating in any go round. So he was progressing. It wasn't like it was to the bitter end, but they were knocking out some amazing times. Maybe one of the best barrel races I've ever seen at Cowtown, because Cowtown can be a little funky in its setup. But I will say with the Women's Association and the WCRA, they are very, very adamant about the ground conditions for a barrel racer that we don't always see in the professional ranks. We can bitch about it every day, because I do. There's times I don't want to enter the rodeo because the ground is so bad, and we don't have anybody that stands up for us. But I will say, when Bobby Moe and them went over to that direction, I have seen them multiple times drag after 3. I have seen them stop the barrel race, move the barrel race, and do whatever it was for the horse in mind. Now, that was refreshing for me. Even at the rank that I was at, it's still a refreshing thing to see, because we don't see it on a daily basis.
Right.
And that is one thing that I've always admired about them, is that they really have kept in mind the barrel horse, not giving them multiple runs in one day, they are going to get paid every run that they make. That's important at that level, because we only have so many runs, and the ground is usually spectacular. Ricky had the ground at Cowtown, one of the best I've ever seen at Cowtown. So that's always a plus. And I think that probably gets me nominating and entering more, is just to know that their number one factor is really the horse.
Yeah. Well, and that makes such a big difference in everything that you do. As we've listened to you, every part of your story ties back to the horse. It just does. Yes, you are an amazing jockey, and it takes two, but your horse is such an instrumental piece and a key to that. What is your philosophy on nominating? I love to hear that you're like, hey, I'm going to nominate because I know where I'm going. I know what I'm going to get paid. And I know the chance that my horse is going to have, which is to show up and show out at his or her best ability. So how do you go about throughout the year? Is it, I know you guys have a lot of fraternities. I know you have a lot of jackpots. I know we have pro rodeos. So what is your philosophy on the nomination?
I usually nominate where I feel like that I have multiple chances to get points. I'm not really big on nominating on like a one-header, unless I'm maybe down to the bitter end and I need a couple points or something like that. But I try to nominate where I feel like that, because I'm not going to get that money back. I'm only going to get it back if I qualify for the end result. So I'm not going to see any kind of money coming back to my pocket. So that money is going to fly out the door. So I just try to make sure that I nominate when I have multiple runs, multiple chances to get them as many points as I possibly can at one time. Then I feel like my nomination is kind of paid for itself. Even though I'm ahead of the ball game because I've won at multiple levels, it still goes out my checkbook and I'm not seeing anything. So in my mind, it's kind of like, I don't know if I really want to spend that money, So I just try to, I don't know if all barrel racers are like that. I have to say that because I see where Ryan is at the top every time. So I know Ryan's nominating those fraternities and those multiple go rounds because she's getting multiple points across the board. So I know that she has to be doing that, and she's not doing the one hitters,
Right.
Just because your chances are better.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the Cowgirl Gathering, which is the event that is right before the Women's World Rodeo Finals starts. So as a barrel racer, you know you're in the top 20, you know you've qualified. Do you go and do you run your horse at that event, at that jackpot to get him in there, or and nominate, get some more points for maybe the next 2025 World Championships? Like, what is your strategy there?
It just depends. To be honest with you, it kind of depends on the horse because that cow town is complicated. And it just depends on the horse. If you live in our area, you're able to go over there almost any weekend. And there it is a great place to go every weekend to season a horse. Now, I don't always do that just because I get home late at night and, I'm at the age that just doesn't really suit me. But when I was in college, I loved it. Right. But, it's the Cowgirl Gathering is it adds a lot of money. It gets you, if you're from out of state and you want to get in the arena, it's a great place to go. And, it pays great. It's a great atmosphere. It feels kind of like a rodeo because Cowtown always kind of feels like a rodeo. It doesn't ever really feel like a jackpot. Even if you're in slack, there's always people mingling around there. So they have a great venue. And if I feel like that horse probably needs a run, I do. But it's really on a horse basis. It's not really something that I plan on. But if it happens, it's fine.
Yeah. Talk about the atmosphere. I too, we are very blessed and fortunate. We're really close to Cowtown. Every weekend I don't have something going on, I find myself over there just because it's a rodeo and you get to go and rope and be in that atmosphere. So talk a little bit about the atmosphere and evolving with your horses. You're going to Cowtown, and then the finals round is over there at AT&T in the stadium. So how do you adapt? I mean, it's obviously two huge atmospheres. They're going to jam pack Cowtown. There's going to be tons of fans cheering. It's so loud in there. But then you also go over to AT&T to the final round, and it's going to be super jam packed, super loud, different atmosphere. How do you adapt your horses from one to the other?
I think that's going to be interesting. I ran at the NFR in Texas, and so which was in the same type atmosphere. I think it will depend on how they set up the arenas. If they're going to have a smaller type atmosphere, if they're going to cock the pattern, if it's going to be complicated. I pretty much say it sometimes. I feel like we're on obstacle courses every time that we run. So maybe it's a better challenge. I will say that moving a horse from Cowtown over there is going to be a totally different scenario because there are horses that thrive in they thrive in that compact scenario, and that's not compact. When you can see people above you, you know that you're in a different atmosphere. So I think it's going to be a totally different scenario for every event. It's going to be interesting. I know last year they took us champions over there for the night to introduce us, and it was an amazing atmosphere. The PBR was a great event. They were great to all the contestants that were over there. I think they're really going to they're really promoting it to the next level. That's going to be great for a audience that maybe hasn't seen some of the women's events. So I think that's going to be great. And I think they're headed in the right direction. I hope it's going to be successful for them. And I think the outcome is going to be way different than the outcome was probably just at Cowtown.
Yeah. I do. I think it's going to be exciting. And for a breakaway roper, it's like you said, the atmosphere changes a whole lot. And it's, do you have a horse for that certain setup or do you not? And are you sticking on the same? I mean, everybody looks a little bit different. So it's just kind of like flying by to the seat of your pants, making that decision as it comes. Talk a little bit about women in professional rodeo and the evolution that you've seen over the years. It's been amazing. You started at 11 years old, running at that kind of level, being exposed to all of the things that have evolved through barrel racing. And now, where do you see this Women's Rodeo World's Championship has given us huge opportunities and been consistent, and they're here to stay. And so that is really encouraging for me as a women's athlete to know, like, I'm going to have this chance and there's going to be more chances coming. Where do you see the sport of women's rodeo moving forward from here?
Well, I was a roper. I hang out with ropers and I like ropers. I'm not the barrel racer that doesn't want a roper around, right? So I talk on horses, and I probably have seen some of the biggest improvement in horsepower in the breakaway roping. And that's a fact. I don't care who you talk to, from a calf roper to the breakaway ropers. We're seeing the horse industry evolve. I love seeing that. I love seeing the fact that a woman is able to go to a rodeo and enter multiple events. I feel like the WCRA put the breakaway ropers on the map. They are helping the breakaway roper have a voice in the professional ranks, because the professional ranks, they're not so sure they love it or not. You know, they're trying to accept it, which is hard to say as a woman in today's time, that we're trying to get it accepted, but it's true, because really what comes to it is venues are getting exceeding their capacity pretty much, and there is a lot of breakaway ropers, and you put the breakaway ropers with the barrel racers, that's a lot of people at one time. And it mind boggles me to think that they try to put them all on the same day, which is always crazy, because you put the two largest events on the same day, and it's hard for a venue. I do love the fact that the WCRA and the Women's Association, I always get it wrong.
I do too. There's too many W's going on here. It's like the WCRA, the WRWC, all the W's, women's event. Yes. Okay.
But I love that they have latched on. They're committed, and they have said that this is what we're going to do for the women ropers, the women barrel racers. We're going to give them an avenue, and we're going to pay them, and we're going to give them a spotlight, which is great to know on a regular basis. And they've done good at that. And they haven't backed down. They've had obstacles, I'm sure, and they haven't backed down one time. And so I think that's great for the women out there that really want to. If you want to really promote somebody, that's your avenue, because they're going to be there and they're going to have it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too that, as you say, they haven't backed down. They have given breakaway roping this platform, and they have been there to stand with us. And that's really, really hard as in a women's event. And not only that, just a professional woman in rodeo. And I just appreciate that support, because it's reciprocated on all the team roping heading, team roping heeling, breakaway, barrel race. We all get paid $60,000 at the end of the day. And there's not another event that does that.
That's right, for sure. And they told you that at the beginning of the year, so you have all year to nominate to get there. And I think that's important, because I love when people have a format, stick to a format, and they pay. That's the one thing that you don't always get. You maybe hearsay and you want to, and you hear some added money, but you know exactly what you're going to get at the end.
Yeah. So is there any hope of you picking your rope back up as you, are you thinking about breakaway roping, head and heeling? I mean, do you want more $60,000 checks?
Yeah. I actually did pick up my team rope for the first time in about 10 years. And, I had some fun, and I rope on my barrel horses quite a bit. I rope the sled and stuff. And I love that for them, because I love the other. And I love talk breakaway, but I'm not sure that I'm at the age that I'm going to get some dip in my loop anytime soon.
Well, that is why I became such a fan of you. When I first started getting into this, I always saw Larry D walking you in the gate, and my husband has talked great things about you as well. And I was like, hey, look at that. There's Cheyenne. And I'm a huge fan of the barrel. I'm scared to death to go fast. You will not ever see me on a barrel horse, probably, unless it's for a lot of money, like $1 million. But
like $1,000.
I don't even know that that's enough for me. Like, I'm a little scared. So, but it is just really neat to. The camaraderie is something I've really appreciated about it. Through the WRWC, I got to watch you run last year on Blue Duck and all the things, and follow your journey and be a part of that, and then got to be friends with you. And so for me, you don't see a breakaway roper and a barrel racer. There's not a whole lot of commonalities yet. And so I think that that's pretty neat about the sport too.
Yeah, I love my breakaway friends. I love, because most of them, they really are at the same motive. They love a great horse. They love the competition, and the camaraderie is great. And so I love the crossover from it. Maybe wish I was a little bit younger to get back into it. But I don't think But I've enjoyed that. I loved it last year. I mean, the camaraderie with those girls, they were, rooting for each other. It felt like you were at a place that really someone wanted you to do good. And that's special in today, because, it is hard to get that on a professional level.
Yeah, it is very hard, and especially competing day in and day out. The older I get and the more I do this, the more important that becomes to me, and creating those relationships. So it's huge. But so Cheyenne, just to finish up with this, I have 2 questions for you. One question is, what drives you each and every day to get up and do all of the things that you do day in and day out?
Well, on the horse level, I'm always trying to find the next best horse. The horsemanship in me has grown. I've tried to improve it every day. Every day that I ride a horse, I try to make that horse better for that day. And I hope in the long run that that horse, becomes a great horse. And I just love the connection of the horse. Um, it truly is about the horse. I love each horse that gives everything they have at that level. The horses that become that professional level, I feel like they're just the athletes in them are just professional athletes. They live it, they breathe it, and they want to do the best they can. And for me to find those horses from a young age and know that they're going to be that level horse, that pretty much drives me in the horse industry.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay. If you had to go back and tell 11-year-old Cheyenne something, what would that be and why?
I wouldn't change a thing. Today there is a lot of avenues, and if you want it bad enough, you can find it, you can do it, you can learn it, and you can succeed. There's more avenues today than there ever has been. Just like what we're doing today, you can pull up a video, you can learn how to saddle your horse, ride a horse, and go around the barrels. And I think those avenues are great. If you find somebody that you like and you idolize, you can reach out to them, and pretty much anybody in the ranks of today are going to help you. And I love that about the sport, about the maybe social communication that we're able to have today. And I wouldn't change a thing. I was brought up to chase your dreams, and I probably never have quit. And there's still things that I want to accomplish, and every day is just another great day. So I wouldn't change one thing from 11 years old.
That's awesome. Well, Cheyenne, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a privilege to talk to you about all things women's rodeo. Best of luck to you at the 2024 Women's Rodeo World Championships, and we will see you at Cowtown.
That's right.